that I started off doing and that I'm still really proud of, and it is the main part of what I do, which is my spoken word. I'm doing this poem I wrote about my stepfather just before he died. It's called Never Too Late. My father died when I was 10, and when she dried her tears, Mum left you in the choir. She'd known of you for years. I was so pleased when she told me that she would be your wife, and I looked forward happily to a new man in my life. But you were the classical singer who thought rock and roll was junk, and I was the bowling boogie boy who soon became a punk. You were the civil servant for whom everything had its place, and I was the left-wing activist out there and in your face. Yes, you were the head of the household, and I was the stroppy kid. We wound each other up for sure. We flipped each other's lid, but later we both learned so much and something new began. And here's a poem I wrote for you, you decent, gentle man. So I went off to my own life, left you and Mum to yours. A few words about football, then the sound of closing doors. But the passing of so many years gave us both time to reflect, and slowly, oh so slowly, we forged a new respect. When you were ill the first time and found it hard to walk, I'd take you to the hospital. We would sit and talk. It felt so right and normal, and it was such a shame that it had taken all this time. Both stubborn, both to blame. Because you were the head of the household and I was the stroppy kid. We wound each other up for sure. We flipped each other's lid, but later we both learned so much and something new began. And here's a poem I wrote for you, you decent, gentle man. When Mum came down with Alzheimer's, 5 years you cooked and cared, and we were round there every day, so many thoughts were shared. Your simple, honest loyalty, the vows you made you'd keep. No longer the big boss man, me, no longer the black sheep. Then came that day in hospital. The end was near, we knew. You told me, I do love you, John. You said, I love you too. You took my hand and squeezed it. Our eyes were filled with tears. The first time that we'd said that, it took 37 years. Because you were the head of the household and I was the stroppy kid. We wound each other up for sure. We flipped each other's lid. But later, we both learned so much and something new began. And here's a poem I wrote for you, you decent, gentle man. It's never too late, never too late, never too late to say you love someone. If it wasn't too late for me and John, then it's never too late for anyone. Yo. All of these to commemorate or to celebrate my 40th anniversary. Cherry Red Books have released my collected works, Heart on My Sleeve, which has got all what I consider to be my best poems and song lyrics for the last 40 years in, as well as 4 years before that. 5 years before that, in fact, Arguments Yard, my autobiography, which you really literally couldn't make up, and I didn't. So there's a huge amounts of stuff on. So we're doing this for 40 years. There's also the Dub Poetry 12-track EP that has just come out. My early music punk stuff that we're doing later on. Loads more books and CDs. But anyway, and 3 volumes of 3 slim volumes. Of my poetry, yeah, I'm doing a mixture of everything from all the years now, and this is the opposite really, I suppose, the polar opposite of the one I wrote for my stepfather. I have the misfortune to come from a long line of working class Tories, unfortunately. I don't know what the ones in Green were like, I don't know that they were, but my maternal grandfather, who was a printer and lived in a council house, was the treasurer of his local Conservative association. And his daughter, not my mother, my aunt, made me so irritated that eventually, while my mother had Alzheimer's and she'd come to visit, and how I did visiting was to sit there reading and occasionally quoting from the Daily Express, I decided that rather than strangle her, which made a difficult situation even worse, I would write a poem And so I did. This is for any of you who have relatives that are similar. It's wonderful here in Scotland because there is the tendency to doff one's forelock, be incredibly stupid and fawn over one's betters is not as anywhere near as prevalent as it is down south. And I really do not understand how you've managed to put up with being ruled by fucking London Tories for all this time. But fortunately, I think this may change very soon. I mean, I really do. Anyway, this was written for my Auntie Frida, and it's called Poison Pensioner. I've tried to work it out, but I just can't see how a cretin like you is related to me. With just one brain cell, and that one's a mess, parroting rubbish from the Daily Express. Not on the Sun, you'll say that was a rag, delusions of grandeur from a jumped-up hag, but don't get ideas, you're as thick as a shoe. Poison Pensioner, this poem's for you. I've had it up to here and I'm cutting out rough. Distant relative? Not distant enough. Ever thought of space travel, prejudiced cow? I'd suggest Uranus, but you're up there right now. You've a monochrome vision of a world that's dead, a million Reader's Digest inside your head. I'd like to put vomit in your cheese fondue. Poison Pensioner, this poem's for you. You worked all your life in the public sector, and all you ever did was whine and hector, moan at the people who fought your cause, cheer for the Tories and their union laws. You were born in a council house, you clueless bitch, but you side with the right and you vote with the rich, bowing and scraping to the privileged few. Poison Pensioner, this poem's for you. You've a medal for meddling, that's for sure. If this was my house, then I'd show you the door. But my mum needs help and you're here to see her. So I sit and I listen to your verbal gonorrhea. Right now, I wish I was in her head. Because mum won't remember a word you've said. Your compassionate act just got a bad review. Poison Pensioner, this poem's for you. Bossy yet servile. Some combination. Paralysed spine of a lick-spittle nation. Could have been a builder, ended up a tall, lifelong victim of divide and rule. You're a ragged trouser philanthropist who wasn't even waiting for the boat you missed. You're a turkey voting for Christmas too. Poison Pensioner, this poem's for you. Cheers. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So last May, I know it's Style Month and all the rest of it, but this is local, and last May my wife became the first ever councillor for Southwark Green, which is our ward where my family have lived for 200 years. The first ever Labour councillor, beat the Tories for the first time ever. 20% swing. So I wrote this poem to honour her, and it goes like this. I'm not a politician, I'm a poet and musician. The poetry line's not always going to fit in my position, but I'm prouder of her being than I've been in my whole life. And that's really saying something, because I truly love my wife. I truly love my wife, and I'm so happy in our marriage. There's not one tiny bit of it that I want to disparage. So I hope I don't embarrass her. I hope that I don't blow it. She's now a Labour councillor. I'm still a punk rock poet. Now, I've written poetry about Starmer, Brown and Blair, and I've written poetry about her pubic hair. And I wrote some staring verses for our canvassing campaign, which ended up in triumph as a great big Labour gain. The swing was enormous, a humongous amount. You should have seen the faces of the Tories and the count. And when she won, I didn't shower her with rings and cars. I drove her up to M&S and bought her 3 new bras. At some point I was going to talk about it, and I'm going to talk about it now. I have a very special view of this, which is basically come about due to my personal experience. I toured the GDR, East Germany, 4 times before the wall came down. And I was part of the left Linkers platform movement to basically try and keep an independent socialist country alive, following Gorbachev's principle of glasnost i perestroika, obviously openness and reconstruction. And we all know what happened next. Openness and reconstruction didn't mean let's give the wealth of the Soviet people and the whole of the former socialist countries to a few oligarchs to buy footballers with and get facelifts done with. And everything that has happened since has been a result. I loved some aspects of the GDR, but there were many things that were totally unacceptable. It was perfectly possible to reform there and the Soviet Union, as Gorbachev hoped, and everywhere else, with decency giving people more for what the people were asking for in the GDR. Mehr Sozialismus, bitte. More socialism, please. More democracy. But economic democracy is as important as political democracy. When people in the West talk about democracy, they're talking about what you can come out, what you're allowed to come out of your mouth. But in order to be able to do that, you have to have economic democracy, i.e., you have to have enough to going into your mouth before that. So I dedicate this to the people of Ukraine. I dedicated it first of all to the people of socialist Yugoslavia, where I travelled in the 80s, and then I saw burning in the 90s, and I remember the places that I'd been and seeing them up in smoke. And I read about the great concert that the mighty Laibach from Slovenia, from Yugoslavia, did in Sarajevo in 1995, and I wrote this song. It's really dedicated tonight to the people of Kiev and the whole of Ukraine. It's called Sarajevo. You don't have to sit back and watch psychopaths fight. The hand of friendship is usually right. Most people want peace and a home somewhere. They don't care about the thugs and their murderous stare. Now we knew this, and for 40 years a brand new way replaced traditional fears. Most people live happily side by side, no place for terror, no need to hide. But it wasn't to the liking of the World Bank suits who cheered when the tribes rediscovered their roots. They can handle torture, rape and death if it opens up markets for the IMF. And they're free now, oh they're free now. A chance for individuals to compete. Free now, oh they're free now. Fascists gun down children in the street. I remember those messages from Amnesty that said the whole damn lot of them should be free, no matter what they say, no matter what they do, because they're all entitled to their point of view. The liberals cheered when the deed was done, then they cried in the face of the tank and the gun, and the arms manufacturers had fun as well, going fat on the profits of sectarian hell. But Tito saw it the only way for 100 years: educate each day and suppress the thugs and their murderous lie, keep the lid on the pot to the hateball dry. But they're free now, oh they're free now. The red camp guards can have a Big Mac for tea. Free now, oh they're free now. Welcome to Western liberal democracy. There's freedom in Bischofferode in East Germany. The town closed due to economic unviability. The word has become meaningless, a travesty. For there can be no freedom without power for the free. And that means more than shopping, actually. In Afghanistan in 1979, everybody swallowed the American line. The socialists from the 12th century were freedom fighters on TV. The Western world took them to their hearts. The whole society was torn apart, and now everything's gone. No one seems to care about the awful nightmare happening there. Civil war in Kabul, but the mentalists cash with Arsenal's board, with Western cash. But the 9 o'clock news isn't there anymore. They're not fighting commies, so it's not a real war. They're free now, oh they're free now. They starve in Moscow, burn in Chechnya. Free now, oh they're free now. Fascism, war, poverty, mafia. Free now, oh they're free now. Look freedom up in the latest dictionary. Free now, oh they're free now. It says an IMF loan and a monetarist economy. In East Berlin, my old friends sing, Auf die Dauer, hilft nur Mauer. We want our wall back, we want our wall back. Can we have our wall back, please?
Yo.
Cheers.